The crystal towers of Lyria shimmered under the light of their dying star. The once blue giant now glowed an angry red, casting long shadows across the planet's surface. Elder Vizin stood at the observation deck, his crystalline body reflecting the ominous light as he watched another atmospheric shield fail in the distance. "How much time do we have?" he asked, his voice a melodious chime that echoed in the chamber. Arden, the communications specialist, approached with a slow, deliberate gait. Her crystal form was smaller than Vizin's, with delicate patterns that marked her as young among their kind. "The shields will completely fail in 37 days, she said, "unless the Council sends help." Vizin's body dimmed slightly, a sign of deep sadness among the Lyrians. "And has the Council responded to our latest plea?" Arden hesitated. "Nothing. Official, Elder. Only silence." Outside, the world they had known for tens of thousands of years was dying. The Lyrians had evolved on this planet, their bodies made of living crystal that stored and processed information like biological computers. They had built a peaceful civilization, one that valued knowledge and harmony above all else. But they had never developed the technology to leave their world. When their scientists discovered their star was destabilizing, they had immediately reached out to the Galactic Council for aid. That was 3 years ago. "I will try again," Vizin said, moving toward the communication chamber. His crystal body made a soft chiming sound as he walked, a sound that had once been common in Lyrian cities but was now rare, as many had entered hibernation to conserve energy. The communication chamber was a vast dome of amplifying crystals, designed to boost signals across the stars. Vizin positioned himself in the center and began to glow from within, transmitting his thoughts directly into the galactic network. "This is Elder Vizin of Lyria. Our situation grows dire. Our star will soon undergo catastrophic changes that will render our world uninhabitable. We request immediate evacuation assistance. The Lyrian people have much to offer the galaxy in knowledge and art. Please respond." The message went out, traveling at speeds beyond light itself through the channels established by the Council's advanced technology. Vizin waited as he had waited hundreds of times before for a response. None came. What Vizin didn't know was that at that very moment, his message was being received. Not by the Council, who had long since set their systems to automatically archive Lyrian distress signals, but by a small station at the edge of Council space. The station was Council property, but was manned by a single representative who had been effectively exiled there. Zethial had once been a respected diplomat but had been sent to this remote posting after questioning too many Council decisions. Now his job was to monitor signals from non-priority sectors. Zethial's scaled face frowned as he listened to Vizin's message. He had heard these pleas for years and had forwarded them all to the Council. He knew what happened to them. They were discussed in closed sessions, evaluated for cost-benefit analysis, and ultimately rejected. The Lyrians, with their crystalline biology, had been deemed evolutionarily redundant by the Council's scientific committee. Similar information storage capabilities had evolved in 3 other species, all of which had more advanced technology and were already Council members. The resources required to save Lyria would be better spent elsewhere, according to the mathematical models the Council used to make decisions. Zethial had been there when the final decision was made. "The universe is vast and resources finite," High Counselor Kythera had said. "We cannot save everyone. The strong survive, the weak perish. This is the natural order." No one had argued, no one except Zethial, which was why he now sat alone at this distant station. With a heavy heart, he recorded a message and sent it directly to Vizin, bypassing official channels. It was against protocol, but he couldn't bear the thought of the Lyrians waiting for help that would never come. Back on Lyria, Vizin was leaving the communication chamber when Arden rushed in, her crystal form pulsing with excitement. "Elder, we have received a response," she said. "It's marked as private, addressed only to you." Vizin's form brightened with hope as he returned to the center of the chamber. "Display the message." A holographic image of Zethial appeared. The Council representative looked tired, his scales dull with age and stress. Elder Vizin of Lyria, Zethal began. I send this message unofficially. The Council has received all your distress calls. They have discussed your situation and have decided not to intervene. They deem the rescue of your species as resource inefficient. I'm sorry. No official ships will come. The alien paused, looking away briefly. This will be my only communication. I risk much by sending this. Prepare your people as best you can. The message ended, and the hologram faded. Vizin stood motionless, his crystal form now dim and dark. Elder? Arden's voice was small. What shall I tell the others? Vizin turned slowly. Tell them. Tell them we continue to wait for the Council's response. I will not spread despair until all hope is truly gone. Arden nodded and left, her steps heavy. Vizin remained alone in the chamber, watching as the angry red light of their dying star filtered through the dome. Later that night, after the city had dimmed for rest cycle, Arden could not enter hibernation. She returned to her post at the communication array, scanning all frequencies out of habit and desperation. It was then that she noticed something strange, a signal pattern she had never seen before, coming from a direction far from Council space. The pattern didn't match any known species in their database. It was simple, almost crude by Council standards, but it was deliberately moving toward the Lyrian emergency frequency. Someone was trying to find their signal, to lock onto it. Arden adjusted the array, strengthening the connection. Suddenly, clear words came through in a language the translator struggled with, but eventually rendered. To the people of the planet sending distress signals. This is Captain Olivia Nash of the Earth vessel Horizon. We have received your calls for help. We are not members of your Galactic Council, but we want to assist. Please respond with coordinates and the nature of your emergency. We are coming. Arden's crystal body lit up with a brightness not seen in years. She immediately began to compose a response, her fingers dancing across the controls. This is Arden of Lyria, she transmitted. Our star is dying, our people need evacuation. The Council has abandoned us. Who are humans? The response came quickly, as if the sender had been waiting eagerly. We're from a planet called Earth. We're new to space travel compared to others. The Council rejected our membership applications. 3 times said we were too unpredictable. There was a pause. But we're good at helping when others are in trouble. Send us your coordinates. We're coming to get you out. Arden hesitated only a moment before sending Lyria's location. She didn't alert Vizin or anyone else. If this was false hope, she would bear the blame alone. The last thing the message from Earth said was, "Hold on, you're not alone anymore." For the first time in years, Arden allowed her crystal form to shine with genuine hope. Captain Olivia Nash stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching as the red giant star grew larger on the main screen. Her brown hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and deep lines marked her face from years of difficult decisions. This mission was perhaps her most important yet. How much longer until we reach Lyria? She asked. Navigation Officer Ben Lewis checked his instruments. 3 hours, Captain. The star's radiation is making our sensors act up, but we should be able to establish a stable orbit. Olivia nodded. Alert all departments. I want everyone ready for first contact procedures. The Horizon was Earth's newest long-range vessel, built for exploration and diplomacy. It wasn't designed for large-scale evacuation, but it was all Earth could send on short notice. When the strange distress calls had been picked up by Earth's deep space array, the decision to respond had been made quickly. Humans might be new to interstellar travel, but they understood what it meant to need help. Officer Kyle Garcia, the ship's communications expert, approached the captain. He was younger than most of the crew, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. Captain, I've been studying the language patterns from the Lyrian transmissions. Their translator technology seems advanced, but there are still cultural concepts that don't convert well. I think I should be part of the first contact team. Agreed, Olivia said. You'll come with me and Chief Engineer Wright. In her quarters, Engineer Susan Wright was reviewing everything they knew about Lyrian physiology. The information was limited, just what they could gather from the brief communications. The Lyrians appeared to be crystalline life forms, something humans had theorized about but never encountered. Fascinating, she muttered to herself while making notes. Their bodies seem to store information like computers, but they're alive, with emotions and culture. How do they reproduce? How do they eat? She had 1,000 questions and hoped she would get answers soon. 3 hours later, the Horizon entered orbit around Lyria. The planet was beautiful from space, covered in structures that reflected light like prisms, creating rainbow patterns across its surface. But even from orbit, they could see the atmospheric disruption caused by the dying star. "Captain, we're being hailed," Kyle said. "Put it through." The main screen filled with the image of a crystalline being. Light moved through its transparent body in complex patterns, and when it spoke, its entire form vibrated slightly. "I am Elder Vizon of Lyria. Are you humans?" Olivia stepped forward. "Yes. I'm Captain Olivia Nash of the Earth vessel Horizon. We received your distress calls and came to help." The crystal being's internal lights pulsed rapidly. "The Council told us no one would come. Why would you, strangers from beyond known space, choose to help us?" Kyle, standing beside the captain, recognized the confusion in Vizon's tone. It wasn't just a question of language. There was a fundamental cultural disconnect. "Elder Vizon," Kyle said, stepping forward. "On Earth, we have a principle. When someone calls for help, you respond. It's that simple." Vizon was silent for a moment. "This is not how the galaxy works, young human. Resources are calculated, benefits are weighed, decisions are made with cold logic." "That's not how we work," Olivia said firmly. "We'd like to send a team to meet with you to discuss evacuation options." After a brief hesitation, Vizon agreed. "You may land at the coordinates we're sending. Be warned that our atmosphere is growing unstable. Your visit must be brief." An hour later, Olivia, Kyle, and Susan stood in the transport room, dressed in environmental suits designed to protect them from unknown conditions. The ship's doctor, Frank Morris, was giving them last-minute instructions. "The atmospheric readings show high radiation levels," he said, his voice gruff with concern. "Your suits will protect you, but don't stay longer than 4 hours. And don't touch any Lyrian directly without testing for compatibility first." The transport beam deposited them in a crystal chamber that reminded Susan of being inside a diamond. Everything reflected and refracted light, creating beautiful patterns on the walls and floor. 3 Lyrians waited for them. Vizon stood in the center, taller than the others, with complex patterns running through his crystal form. Beside him was a smaller Lyrian with a faster internal light pulse. "This is Arden," Vizon said, indicating the smaller one. "She was the first to receive your message. And this is Mix, our lead scientist." The third Lyrian bowed slightly. Mix was different from the others. Parts of his crystal body were cloudy rather than clear. "Welcome to Lyria," Vizon said, "though I fear you have arrived only in time to witness our end." Susan stepped forward, her scientific curiosity evident even through her suit. "Elder Vizon, our scans show your star's deterioration is accelerating. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." Mix moved closer. "Come, I will show you our data." In Mix's laboratory, the humans stared at crystalline displays showing the star's condition. Susan's face grew increasingly concerned as she translated the Lyrian measurements to human terms. "This is worse than we thought," she said quietly to Olivia. "The radiation levels will reach lethal levels for the Lyrians in weeks, not months, as we estimated. Their crystal bodies are particularly vulnerable to this specific type of stellar radiation." Olivia turned to Vizon. "How many Lyrians are there on the planet?" "Approximately 12,000, Vizon replied. "Many have already entered deep hibernation to conserve energy." Kyle did the math quickly. "The Horizon can safely transport maybe 300 in emergency conditions. That's not nearly enough." Olivia's face showed no fear or hesitation, only determination. "Then we need more ships." She activated her communication device. "Horizon, Patch me through to Earth Command. Priority, Alpha. Back on Earth, Admiral Laura Bell received the transmission in the middle of the night. Her gray hair was disheveled, but her mind was sharp as always. "Nash, do you know what time it is here?" she asked, but there was no real anger in her voice. "Admiral, we need every available ship. 12,000 lives are at stake, and we have weeks, not months." Bell listened as Olivia explained the situation. When the captain finished, there was silence for a long moment. "You realize what you're asking?" Bell finally said. "To divert all our ships would leave Earth vulnerable. The Galactic Council has already warned us about interfering in their territory." "The Council abandoned these people to die," Olivia said firmly. "If we do the same, we're no better than they are." Diplomatic advisor Peter Miller, who had been listening from the side of Bell's office, spoke up. "Captain, the Council specifically warned us against contact with non-member species. This could jeopardize our entire standing in the galactic community." "With all due respect, sir," Kyle interjected. "What standing? They've rejected our membership application 3 times. They call us primitive and dangerous." Bell rubbed her temples. "Miller has a point, Captain. This isn't just about one rescue mission. This could affect Earth's future for generations." Olivia looked around at the Crystal City, at the Lyrians watching her with hope in their shimmering bodies. She thought about what it meant to be human, about the values that had guided Earth through its darkest times. "Admiral," she said, her voice steady, "if we abandon these people when we have the power to help, what kind of future are we building anyway?" There was a long silence from Earth. Finally, Bell sighed. "I'll divert every ship we can spare. God help us all if the Council decides to make an example of us." As the transmission ended, Olivia turned to Vizen. "More ships are coming. We'll get your people to safety." For the first time, the Elder's crystal body glowed with a warm golden light, the Lyrian expression of hope. 7 days after Captain Nash's call to Earth, the sky above Lyria filled with ships. 47 vessels of various sizes and designs dropped out of faster-than-light travel almost simultaneously. It was the largest fleet Earth had ever assembled, for a single mission. Commander Alan Foster stood on the bridge of the Liberty, the largest of the rescue vessels. At 52, he had seen much in his career, but nothing like this. The Liberty was a converted military transport, hastily refitted, to carry as many refugees as possible. "All ships report ready for operations," his first officer said. Alan nodded. "Tell them to maintain orbit and await further instructions. I'll take a shuttle down to meet with Captain Nash and assess the situation firsthand." On the surface of Lyria, the arrival of the fleet had caused a wave of emotion among the crystalline people. Many had emerged from hibernation as hope spread through their collective consciousness. Elder Vizen watched the ships appear on the monitoring screens, his crystal body glowing brighter than it had in months. "Your people came," he said to Olivia, who stood beside him. "You truly came. We said we would," she replied simply. The Horizon had spent the past week setting up a base camp near the main Lyrian city. Chief Medical Officer Denise Carter had been working non-stop with Lyrian scientist Mix to understand the needs of the crystalline beings during space travel. "Their bodies are incredibly sensitive to vibration and pressure changes," Denise explained to Olivia. "Standard transport conditions would cause them to fracture, possibly fatally." Mix nodded, the cloudy patches in his crystal form shifting slightly. "Our natural environment is very stable. We evolved on a planet with minimal tectonic activity and a consistent atmosphere. Space travel as you know it would destroy us." Denise ran a hand through her short red hair, a habit when she was thinking hard. "We need specialized containment units, cushioned, pressure-regulated with minimal vibration transfer." "Can we make them?" Olivia asked. "We'll have to," Denise said, "but it means sacrificing parts of our own life support systems. Each ship will have to reduce human support capacity to make room." When Commander Foster's shuttle landed, he found a hive of activity. Humans in environmental suits worked alongside Lyrians, preparing for the evacuation. He spotted Olivia directing a team near a row of half-built structures that looked like crystal cases lined with padding. "Captain Nash," he said, extending his hand. Commander Foster, Earth sent me with every ship we could gather. Olivia shook his hand, relief evident on her face. Thank you, Commander. We'll need every one of them. Alan looked around at the busy scene. Brief me on the situation. As they walked, Olivia explained the challenges they faced. The specialized containment units needed for Lyrian transport. The limited time before radiation reached lethal levels. The logistics of moving 12,000 beings who had never been off-planet. And the Council? Alan asked quietly. Any response to our presence here? Nothing yet, Olivia said. But they know we're here. It's only a matter of time. Their conversation was interrupted by Kyle, who jogged up to them, his face serious behind his suit's faceplate. Captain Commander, the Lyrians have detected a ship at the edge of the system. It's not responding to hails, but its energy signature matches Council technology. Alan's expression hardened. So they've sent someone to watch us, more likely to warn us off, Olivia said. We should continue with the evacuation as planned. How many containment units do we have ready? 212, Kyle reported. Dr. Carter says we can complete another 100 by tomorrow. Not fast enough, Alan muttered. At this rate, evacuation will take weeks. Weeks we don't have, Olivia finished his thought. I'll talk to Mix about simplifying the design. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the Crystal City when Susan Wright approached Mix in his laboratory. The engineer had been studying Lyrian technology, fascinated by how they combined crystalline biology with advanced science. Mix, I've been thinking about the containment units, Susan said. What if we used your own stasis technology? The hibernation state many of your people entered. Could we adapt that for transport? Mix's inner lights pulsed faster, a sign of excitement. It might be possible. Hibernation significantly reduces our sensitivity to external conditions, but we would need a way to maintain the stasis field during transit. Show me how it works, Susan said, pulling out her datapad. We might be able to integrate it with our ship's power systems. Across the city, in what served as the Lyrian equivalent of a hospital, Denise Carter was examining Elder Vision. The leader had been working tirelessly, and his crystal form showed signs of stress, cloudy patches similar to those in Mix's body. You need rest, Elder, Denise said, reading the scanner results. There is no time for rest, Vision replied. My people need me. Your people need you alive and functioning, Denise countered. This clouding in your crystal structure, what does it mean? Vision was silent for a moment. It is the beginning of crystalline decay. The radiation from our star is affecting me as it affects all Lyrians. Mix has had it longer. That is why his clouding is more extensive. Denise sat back alarmed. How? Long before it becomes fatal? Days, perhaps. Less for some, more for others. It depends on individual resilience. We need to prioritize evacuation for those showing advanced signs of decay, Denise said, already making notes on her medical pad. The next morning, as the first large group of Lyrians was being prepared for evacuation, a message came through on all communication channels. On the bridge of the Liberty, Commander Foster watched as a council enforcer appeared on screen. The alien was tall and slender, with dark blue skin and multiple eyes arranged in a circle around its head. It wore the distinctive silver uniform of Council authority. I am Enforcer Zekra of the Galactic Council, it said, its translator converting the complex sounds into English. You are engaging in unauthorized interference with a natural extinction event. This violates Council non-interference directives. Cease all evacuation activities immediately. Alan stood straight, his military bearing evident. This is Commander Joseph Wilson of Earth. We are not members of your council and therefore not bound by your directives. These people need help, and we're providing it. This will have consequences for Earth's standing in the galactic community, Zekra warned. The Council has denied your membership applications for good reason. Your species is unpredictable and does not understand the natural order. If the natural order means leaving intelligent beings to die when they could be saved, then you're right, we don't understand it, Alan replied. Now, unless you're here to help with the evacuation, please maintain your distance from our operation. The Council ship fired a warning shot that passed close to one of the smaller human vessels, a research ship called Curiosity. The bright beam of energy lit up space like a lightning bolt. Without hesitation, Dr. Michelle Young, commander of the Curiosity, maneuvered her small vessel between the Council warship and the evacuation fleet. Her ship was the smallest in the human fleet, with minimal weapons and defenses. "Council vessel," she transmitted, her voice steady despite the danger. "This is Dr. Michelle Young of the Earth research vessel Curiosity. We are conducting a humanitarian mission. If you want to stop us, you'll have to destroy us first." Through the view screen, Alan and the others on the Liberty's bridge could see the tiny Curiosity, dwarfed by the Council ship, holding position like a shield. The Council ship didn't fire again. After a tense minute, Zucker's voice came through once more. "This incident will be reported to Council High Command. Expect a formal response." With that, the Council ship turned and headed back to the edge of the system, though it didn't leave completely. Alan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Tell Dr. Young she has more courage than sense. And double the evacuation efforts. We may not have much time before they come back with more ships." On Lyria's surface, the first containment units were being loaded onto transport shuttles. Each crystal case held a Lyrian in semi-hibernation, their bodies glowing softly within. Human crew members handled them with extreme care, aware that each case contained a living being whose existence now depended on them. As Olivia supervised the loading, she found herself standing next to Arden, who watched her people being carried away with mixed emotions. "Are you afraid?" Olivia asked. Arden's inner lights flickered in a pattern that the translator interpreted as a sad laugh. "Terrified, but also grateful. Your people are risking much for strangers." "That's what humans do," Olivia said. "At our best, anyway." The first shuttle lifted off, carrying 30 Lyrians to their new future among the stars. The journey back to Earth began with a slow procession of ships leaving Lyrian orbit. 5 days had passed since the confrontation with the Council vessel, and nearly half of the Lyrian population was now safely aboard the human fleet. Captain Olivia Nash stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching the final shuttles returning from the surface. "Status report," she said to Kyle, who was coordinating the evacuation from his station. "Just over 7,000 Lyrians are now aboard the fleet," he replied. "The last group will be up within 12 hours. We've prioritized those showing advanced signs of crystal decay." Olivia nodded. "And Elder Weizen?" "He insists on being in the last group. Says he won't leave until every one of his people is safe." This didn't surprise Olivia. In the short time she had known the Lyrian leader, she had come to respect his devotion to his people. It reminded her of the best human leaders throughout history, those who put the needs of others before their own. On the Liberty, Commander Alan Foster was dealing with another challenge. The ship's life support systems were strained to the limit, maintaining both human crew quarters and the special conditions needed for the Lyrian containment units. "We need to divert more power to the Lyrian section," Engineer Paul Wilson explained. "Their units are showing temperature fluctuations that could be dangerous." "Where can we take it from?" Alan asked. Paul hesitated. "The only option is crew quarters. We'd have to reduce heat by at least 15 degrees in all human living areas." Alan didn't hesitate. "Do it. Issue thermal blankets to all crew members, and rotate shorter shifts so people can warm up." "Sir, that's below comfort regulations for—" "I know what the regulations say, Wilson. Do it anyway. We didn't come all this way to lose a single Lyrian because we wanted to stay comfortable." Throughout the fleet, similar decisions were being made. Humans gave up comforts, space, and resources to keep their crystalline passengers safe. On the medical ship Mercy, Dr. Denise Carter worked with a team of human and Lyrian healers to treat those suffering from advanced radiation exposure. "The clouding is spreading faster in this one," she said to a Lyrian healer named Lix. They stood over a containment unit holding a young Lyrian, whose once clear body was now nearly half clouded with gray patches. "Yes," Lix agreed, "but see how the core still pulses strongly? There is still hope." Denise nodded and adjusted the unit's settings. "We've found that a specific frequency of light seems to slow the clouding. We're applying it to all the severe cases now." Across the fleet, Unexpected connections formed between humans and Lyrians. On the science vessel Discovery, Elder Vision had finally been convinced to board, leaving his dying world behind. The ancient Lyrian spent much of his time in the ship's observation deck, watching as his home planet grew smaller in the distance. It was there that communications officer Amy Jackson found him one quiet shift. At 25, Amy was the youngest, senior officer on the Discovery. Her curiosity about the Lyrians had led her to study their language and culture whenever she had free time. "May I join you, Elder?" she asked, approaching carefully. Vision's crystal form pulsed gently. "Of course, young human. Your company is welcome." Amy sat beside the containment unit, which had been positioned to give Vision a clear view of space. "Do you miss it already?" she asked, nodding toward the fading image of Lyria. "A home is more than a place," Vision replied. "It is memories, connections, shared experiences. In that sense, I have not left my home behind. It travels with us in the minds and bodies of my people." Amy considered this. "That's a beautiful way to think about it. Humans often get attached to physical places. And yet you leave your world to explore the stars," Vision observed. "I guess we're contradictory that way," Amy said with a smile. Their conversation continued for hours, each learning about the other species. Vision explained how Lyrians stored information within their crystal structures, passing knowledge directly from one generation to the next through a process similar to what humans would call downloading. Amy described Earth's diverse cultures and environments, the constant change and adaptation that defined human history. "Your species embraces change," Vision noted. "Ours has traditionally feared it. Perhaps that is why the Council found you unsettling. And maybe why they found you dispensable," Amy said, then immediately apologized. "I'm sorry, that was blunt." "But accurate," Vision said. "The Council values progress and efficiency above all else. A species that resists change does not fit their vision of galactic evolution." Meanwhile, in the quiet depths of space, the fleet received troubling news. Captain Nash and Commander Foster were reviewing intercepted Council communications in the Liberty's secure meeting room. "They've called an emergency session," Olivia said, looking at the decoded message. "To discuss the human interference, as they call it." Alan's face was grim. "Do we know what they're planning?" "Not yet. But whatever it is, it won't be good for Earth. We've directly challenged their authority." Kyle, who had joined them for the meeting, spoke up. "There's something else in these transmissions that's interesting. Look at this section." He highlighted a portion of text on the screen. "They're discussing why humans were kept out of the Council in the first place." Olivia read the section carefully. "It says we were deemed too unpredictable and emotionally driven to be trusted with advanced technology, that our tendency to value individual lives over statistical efficiency makes humans incompatible with rational galactic governance. They rejected us because we care too much," Alan said with a short, humorless laugh. "I can't say I'm surprised." "Sir," Kyle said, "given this information, what do you think will happen when we return to Earth?" Alan and Olivia exchanged looks. "Best case," Alan said, "they issue a formal protest and impose some kind of sanctions. Worst case, they decide to make an example of us," Olivia finished. The journey continued, and as the days passed, resources grew increasingly scarce. Food supplies were carefully rationed, and non-essential systems were shut down to conserve power for the Lyrian containment units. On the transport ship Determination, Captain Richard Hayes faced a difficult decision when power fluctuations threatened the Lyrian section. The ship's engineer gave him two options: redirect power from crew quarters, dropping the temperature to near freezing, or risk unstable conditions for 50 Lyrian passengers. "Redirect the power," Hayes ordered without hesitation. "Issue all cold weather gear to the crew and establish a rotation schedule for warming breaks in the engine room." "Sir," his first officer protested, "the crew can't function effectively in those conditions for more than a few hours." "Then we'll work in shorter shifts," Hayes said firmly. "I'm not losing a single Lyrian on my watch." When a junior officer later asked him why he made that choice, Hayes simply replied, "Because We're human. This is what we do. As the fleet approached the halfway point of their journey, long-range sensors detected something concerning. A council blockade was forming near the edge of the Sol system, Earth's home. Dozens of advanced warships were taking up positions, clearly waiting for the returning human fleet. The news spread quickly and tension filled every ship. The humans had known there might be consequences for their actions, but the reality of facing the Council's military might was sobering. On the Horizon's bridge, Olivia received the reports with a calm face, though inside her stomach twisted with worry. "Send a message to Admiral Bell," she told Kyle. "Tell her we're coming home with guests and we might have company following us." Admiral Laura Bell stood in Earth's Orbital Defense Command Center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching Galactic Council fleet. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and deep lines creased her face as she studied the tactical situation. "How many ships?" she asked her second-in-command. 23 Council vessels, Admiral. All heavily armed." Bell nodded. She had expected this. When she made the decision to send Earth's ships to rescue the Lyrians, she knew there would be consequences. Now they had arrived, and our own fleet? The rescue fleet will arrive in approximately 12 hours. All remaining Earth defense vessels are in position, but the officer hesitated. "But we're outmatched," Bell finished for him. "I know. Send a message to the Council fleet. Request a dialogue." The message was sent, but the Council ships maintained their silence. They had taken up a blockade formation, clearly intending to intercept the returning human fleet with its Lyrian passengers. In her office below the command center, Bell met with diplomatic advisor Peter Miller. The thin, nervous man paced as he spoke. "We should consider surrendering the Lyrians," he said. "The Council might be lenient if we acknowledge our error and turn them over." Bell fixed him with a cold stare. "These people risked their lives to save others who needed help. We're not going to abandon them now." Miller stopped pacing. "Admiral, you don't understand what we're facing. The Council could destroy us if they choose. They have technology we can barely comprehend." "I understand perfectly well," Bell said firmly. "But some things are worth standing for, even against impossible odds." As the human fleet approached Earth, tension grew on every ship. The Lyrians, now aware of the danger, were deeply troubled. Elder Vizon called a meeting with Captain Nash and Commander Foster aboard the Liberty. "You have risked too much for us already," Vizon said, his crystal form dimmed with concern. "We cannot ask you to risk your homeworld as well." "You didn't ask," Olivia said. "We offered." Alan nodded in agreement. "This isn't just about your people anymore, Elder. It's about what kind of civilization we want to be. One that stands by while others suffer, or one that helps those in need, whatever the cost." Vizon was silent for a moment. "My people have much to learn from yours," he finally said, "if we survive this encounter." On the bridge of the Council flagship, Supreme Kithara watched the approaching human fleet with multiple eyes that blinked in a rhythmic pattern. The tall, multi-limbed alien had ruled the Council for 3 centuries, guiding galactic policy with cold logic and ruthless efficiency. "The humans show no signs of changing course," reported a subordinate. "As expected," Kithara said. "Their behavior is predictably irrational. Open a direct channel to their fleet." Throughout the human ships, screens lit up with the image of Supreme Kithara. The alien's voice was translated into a flat, mechanical tone. "Humans of Earth, you have violated the natural order. The strong survive, the weak perish. This is the way of the universe. Surrender the Lyrians to us immediately or face extinction alongside them." On the horizon, Captain Olivia Nash took a deep breath before responding. She knew her words would speak for all humanity in this crucial moment. "This is Captain Olivia Nash of Earth. We reject your natural order. Where we come from, strength, is measured by how many you can save, not how many you can sacrifice." A murmur of approval went through the bridge crew. Kyle gave her a subtle thumbs up from his station. "You are outnumbered and outgunned," Kithara stated. "Your defiance is illogical." "Maybe so," Olivia replied. "But it's who we are." The Council fleet began to move into attack formation. On Earth's orbital platforms, defense systems came online, ready for a battle they could not win. Admiral Bell gave the order for all civilians to move to underground shelters. Then something unexpected happened. Throughout the human fleet, the Lyrians began to connect their containment units to ship systems. Elder Vizon had organized it quietly, working with Amy Jackson to coordinate the effort across all vessels. "What are they doing?" Alan asked, watching as Lyrian units throughout the Liberty lit up with increasing brightness. Amy's voice came through, on the comm. "Sir, the Lyrians are linking their crystalline networks. They're creating a massive, distributed computing system using their own bodies. The Lyrians, with their natural ability to store and process information, were turning themselves into the most powerful computer network ever created. They accessed the Council's communication protocols, decoded them in seconds, and began broadcasting. Every ship in the galaxy, every communication device on every Council world, suddenly displayed the truth. Recordings of Council meetings where species were deemed evolutionarily redundant. The cold calculations that decided which civilizations lived and which were left to die. The deliberate policy of keeping emotional species like humans from joining the galactic community. And alongside these damning records, they broadcast the story of their rescue. How humans, a species the Council had rejected 3 times, had risked everything to save strangers. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across the galaxy, other species who had faced similar treatment from the Council responded. Ships from dozens of non-Council worlds began appearing near Earth, standing with the humans and Lyrians. Many were from civilizations that had lost sister colonies or related species to the Council's policy of natural selection. On the Council flagship, Supreme Kythera watched in disbelief as the fleet's communications officer reported incoming transmissions from Council member worlds. "Multiple Council representatives are questioning our actions," the officer said, a note of shock in his voice. "Some are threatening to withdraw from the Council if we attack Earth." Kythera's multiple eyes blinked rapidly. For the first time, in 3 centuries, the Supreme faced something unexpected, a moral rebellion within the perfectly logical system it had created. The Council fleet stood down. In the weeks that followed, a new alliance formed. Not based on technological advancement or evolutionary superiority, but on mutual aid and respect for all sentient life. Earth, once considered too primitive for galactic politics, became the headquarters of this new alliance. The Lyrians settled on Earth and its colonies, their crystalline bodies eventually adapting to their new home. Their perfect memories and information processing abilities made them natural historians and teachers. Elder Vizon, standing beside Admiral Bell at the signing of the Alliance Charter, offered a simple truth that became its first principle. The measure of civilization is not in its power to destroy, but in its will to save. The Lyrians had been abandoned by the galaxy, only to be saved by the last ones they expected. In return, they helped humanity change the course of galactic history, creating a new order based not on cold calculation, but on compassion. And across the stars, species that had lived in fear of being deemed redundant looked to Earth with hope, and to humans with newfound respect. The ones the Council had rejected had become the ones who would lead the galaxy into a better future. Crusade stared at the flashing red lights across the control panel. His 4-fingered hands trembled as he tried once more to restart the main engines of the research vessel, Stellar Whisper. Nothing happened. The quiet hum that had been his constant companion for the past 3 years was gone, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the occasional warning beep. The explosion had come without warning. One moment he was recording his observations about the unusual nebula they were passing. The next, the ship shook violently, throwing him against the wall. When he regained consciousness, the rest of his 5-member crew was dead, and the ship's engine core was beyond repair. That was 27 days ago. Crusade moved his thin gray body toward the communication station. His food supplies were running low, and the life support systems were operating at minimal capacity to conserve energy. The temperature had dropped to levels that made his skin ache, but he could not waste power on heating. Every bit of energy needed to go to the distress signal. "This is Science Officer Crusade of the Deltarian research vessel, Stellar Whisper," he said into the transmitter for what felt like the 1,000th time. "Engine failure in Sector 793. 4 crew members deceased. Life support failing. Requesting immediate rescue." He paused, then added the mathematical sequence that all Deltarian ships would recognize as a priority distress code. The message would repeat automatically every 30 minutes, broadcasting in all directions across the emptiness of space. Crusade knew the odds. The Stellar Whisper had been on a deep space mission, far from the usual Deltarian travel routes. Their mission was to study unusual cosmic phenomena in uncharted regions. It made their research valuable but also meant that rescue would be challenging, even if the High Command decided the effort was worth it. He checked the food storage again. If he cut his portions even further, he might last another 15 days. By then, the oxygen recyclers would be failing anyway. The communication panel suddenly lit up with an incoming transmission. Crusade felt a surge of hope as he rushed to answer it. "Science Officer Crusade, this is High Commander Vreknar," said the stern voice. The screen remained dark. Long-distance communications could only carry audio to conserve bandwidth. "Commander, thank you for responding. I need immediate—" "I have reviewed your situation, Science Officer," the commander interrupted. "The High Council has calculated the resources required for your retrieval." Crusade waited, his breathing shallow. He knew what was coming before. The commander spoke again. "The expenditure cannot be justified for a single crew member. The Stellar Whisper mission is hereby classified as terminated with casualties. Your research data has been marked as lost." Crusade felt his inner eyelids close briefly in the Deltarian expression of acceptance. "I understand, Commander," he replied, his voice steady despite the death sentence he had just received. "For the greater good of the Deltarian people." "Your service will be recorded in the archives," the commander said, and then the transmission ended. Crusade stood motionless for several minutes. He had always known this was the way of his people. The Deltarians had survived as a species for thousands of years by making hard, logical decisions. Resources were never wasted, especially not on lost causes. Individual lives were valuable, only as far as they contributed to the collective. He moved to shut down the distress signal. There was no point in wasting power on it now, but stopped. Some small, rebellious part of him refused to give up. He adjusted the signal instead, widening its broadcast range and converting it to use a more universal mathematical sequence that any technologically advanced species might recognize. "I will not go silently," he whispered to the empty ship. 2 months passed. Crusade had long exceeded his calculated survival time through careful rationing and by shutting down all non-essential systems. He spent most days in a state of semi-hibernation, slowing his metabolism to conserve oxygen and nutrients. The ship grew colder and the air thinner, but still he clung to life. His distress signal continued to pulse outward, traveling across the vast emptiness of space, growing weaker with distance but never stopping. Aboard the human exploration vessel, Horizon Seeker, Communications Officer Lisa Grant adjusted her headset as she monitored the deep space communication arrays. The ship was testing new long-range sensors at the edge of charted territory, a 3-month mission to map potential new exploration routes. "Still getting that weird feedback, Sam," she called to the engineer working nearby. Sam Cooper looked up from his tablet. "The new array is working fine according to my diagnostics." "What kind of feedback?" "It's not random static," Lisa said, frowning at her screen. "There's a pattern to it. Every few minutes the same sequence repeats." Sam walked over to her station and looked at the wavelength display. "Could be natural stellar noise. Some pulsars give off regular signals." "This doesn't match any pulsar patterns in our database," Lisa replied, tapping at her keyboard. "And look at this mathematical sequence embedded in it. That's not natural." Sam scratched his beard. "You should tell Captain Miller." 20 minutes later, Captain Frank Miller stood in the communications room with his senior officers. Lisa had isolated the signal and was playing it through the ship's speakers. It repeats exactly the same way each time, she explained. The ship's AI classified it as probable space noise, but I think it's artificial. Science Officer Diane Murphy nodded. Those sequences are too precise to be natural. That's a structured communication using mathematical constants as a base. Captain Miller studied the signal patterns on the main screen. Any idea what it's saying? Not yet, Lisa replied. But based on the repeating nature and the use of universal mathematical constants, it matches what we'd expect from a distress call. Miller's expression grew serious. How far away is the source? Navigation Officer Alan Price checked his calculations. Based on signal strength and degradation patterns, approximately 2 weeks at our maximum speed, Captain. It would mean delaying our primary mission. Security Chief Nicole Peterson frowned. Captain, we don't know who or what is sending this. It could be a trap. There are records of false distress signals being used to lure ships in frontier space. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Captain Miller. He studied the signal readout for a long moment, his weathered face thoughtful. If someone's out there calling for help, they've been waiting a long time, he finally said. We can't just ignore that. Lisa, keep working on decoding the message. Alan, plot a course to the signal source. What about our primary mission, sir? Alan asked. Miller looked around at his crew. We're explorers, but we're human first. If someone needs our help, that becomes the mission. We don't leave people stranded if we can help it. As the Horizon Seeker changed course, the signal grew slightly stronger with each passing hour. In the darkness of his failing ship, Crusade remained unaware that his call had been heard, or that a species he had never encountered was now racing across the stars to find him. The Horizon Seeker moved through space with purpose, its engines pushing to maximum safe levels. Inside the ship, the crew worked around the clock to learn more about the mysterious signal. Lisa Grant hadn't left the communications room for more than a few hours of sleep since they changed course. She sat surrounded by equipment, some of it modified by Sam to better capture the faint transmission. Her eyes were tired, but she refused to give up. I think I've isolated something, she said, as Captain Miller entered the room. It's definitely not random. Look at this pattern here. On her screen, a series of mathematical sequences repeated with slight variations. Diane Murphy, the science officer, studied the patterns carefully. These could be coordinates, Diane said, pointing to one section of numbers. And this part repeats in exactly the same way each time, like an identifier. Benjamin Ward, the ship's linguist, nodded in agreement. It's similar to how we structured our own early deep space transmissions. Math is universal. It works as a foundation for first contact. Captain Miller looked at the readouts. So we're definitely dealing with an intelligent source, not a natural phenomenon. Yes, Lisa confirmed, and based on the signal degradation it's been broadcasting for months. Miller's expression darkened. Months. Whoever sent this has been waiting a long time for someone to answer. The captain turned to Alan Price, who was monitoring their course. How much longer until we reach the source? 8 days, 4 hours. At current speed, Alan replied. We're burning more fuel than recommended, but the engines are holding. Keep this pace, Miller ordered. I don't want to make them wait any longer than necessary. Nicole Peterson, standing by the door, crossed her arms. Captain, I still recommend caution. We should prepare security protocols for when we arrive. Miller nodded. Agreed. But we'll approach his friends first. If someone needs help, that's what we'll provide. As the Horizon Seeker continued its journey, Benjamin worked on creating a simple response message. If someone was listening for an answer, they needed to know help was coming. 5 days later, Crusade awakened from his hibernation cycle, feeling weaker than ever. His body, once strong and healthy, had become thin and fragile. The cold had settled deep in his bones, and each breath was becoming difficult. He checked the ship's systems out of habit, though he knew what he would find. Life support was failing. The air recyclers were operating at less than 20% capacity. He had perhaps 2 days before oxygen levels became too low to sustain him. Crusade moved slowly to the small window in the command center. The stars looked the same as always, distant and indifferent to his fate. He had spent much of his career studying them, learning their secrets. Now they would be the last thing he would ever see. A sudden beep from the communication console caught his attention. It was a sound he hadn't heard in months, an incoming signal. Crusade moved as quickly as his weakened body allowed, his heart's racing with sudden hope. The signal was weak and unlike any Deltarian transmission he had ever received. The pattern was unfamiliar, but clearly artificial. Someone had heard his call. But who? Crusade checked the ship's sensors, which still functioned on minimal power. There was nothing visible yet, but something was definitely approaching. The signal grew stronger with each passing minute. For the first time in months, Crusade felt something other than resignation. Not quite hope, he was too practical for that, but curiosity. Even if rescue was impossible, at least he might make contact with another intelligence before the end. He sent a response using the same mathematical patterns from the incoming message, acknowledging that he had received their transmission. Aboard the Horizon Seeker, Lisa's console lit up with activity. "Captain, we've got a response," she called out excitedly. "They heard us." The bridge crew gathered around her station. The return signal was weak but unmistakable. "They've used the same mathematical sequence we sent, but reversed it, Benjamin." Noted? That's a classic first contact protocol. It shows they understand communication. "Can we get a visual on the source yet?" Miller asked. Alan shook his head. "Still too far away for visual confirmation, but sensors are picking up a small object at the coordinates. Definitely not a natural body. It's artificial." "Life signs?" the captain asked. Diane checked the readings. "Inconclusive at this range. If there's someone alive, their life support must be minimal. We're detecting very low energy outputs." Miller's face showed his concern. "They might not have much time left. Push the engines harder." "Captain, we're already at maximum safe levels," Alan warned. "Then go beyond safe," Miller replied firmly. "Calculate exactly how much we can push them without causing permanent damage. These people have waited long enough." 3 days later, Crusade's situation had grown desperate. The oxygen level had dropped below what his species needed to remain conscious for long periods. He drifted in and out of awareness, saving his energy for brief periods of communication with the approaching vessel. He still didn't know who they were, only that they weren't Deltarian. His people would never have come for him. Whoever these strangers were, they operated by different principles. Crusade forced himself to stay awake as the ship's sensors detected an object dropping out of faster-than-light travel nearby. For the first time, he got readings on the approaching vessel. It was unlike any ship design he had ever studied, clearly alien technology. The vessel was smaller than Deltarian cruisers, but moved with remarkable precision. As it approached, Crusade saw strange markings on its hull, symbols he couldn't read. The ship positioned itself carefully alongside the damaged Stellar Whisper. A new transmission came through, stronger now with the reduced distance. It contained a simple visual, a strange bipedal lifeform with only 2 arms and no tail. The alien skin was a color Crusade had never seen on a sentient species, and it had fur on the top of its head. It was gesturing in what appeared to be a peaceful greeting. Crusade activated his ship's visual transmitter, using the last of his emergency power reserves. He knew he must look terrible. Emaciated, weak, his normally luminous skin dull from months of hibernation and starvation. But he sat up straight and returned the greeting gesture as best he could. Through the view screen, Crusade saw the aliens' expression change. Though he couldn't interpret its facial movements, he sensed surprise. Perhaps they hadn't expected to find someone still alive. Or perhaps they hadn't expected to find someone like him. The alien spoke, the sounds meaningless, to Crusade. Then it held up what appeared to be a mechanical device and pointed to the side of the Stellar Whisper. Crusade understood. They wanted to dock with his ship, to rescue him. After months alone preparing for death, the prospect of rescue seemed impossible. Yet these strangers, these aliens who had never met him or his species, had traveled for days just to find him. With Trembling hands, Crusade activated the emergency docking protocols on his ship. As the Horizon Seeker moved carefully into position, he wondered about these beings who would expend such resources to save a single unknown life. The docking procedure was not simple. The Horizon Seeker and the Stellar Whisper were built by entirely different species with different technologies. Sam Cooper studied the alien ship's docking mechanism through the external cameras. Their airlock system is nothing like ours, he told Captain Miller. We can't connect directly. Dr. Kelly Harris joined them carrying a portable medical kit. We need to get inside. Based on what we saw, that alien is in bad shape. Miller turned to Joe Mitchell, the engineering specialist. Can you rig something? Joe nodded slowly, his mind already working on the problem. Give me 30 minutes. I'll create an adapter that should work between the two ships. As Joe hurried off with Sam to gather materials, Miller gathered the boarding team. Eric Bennett, the ship's first officer, would lead the rescue mission. Dr. Harris would assess the alien's medical needs. Benjamin would attempt basic communication. Remember, we know nothing about this species, Miller told them. Move slowly, use non-threatening gestures, and follow Eric's lead. Our priority is to get the survivor safely aboard our ship. Joe and Sam worked quickly, building a temporary airlock adapter from spare parts. It wasn't pretty, but it would create a sealed passage between the two ships. It'll hold for about 20 minutes, Joe explained as they attached it to the Horizon Seeker's airlock. After that, the seal might start to fail. Eric nodded. That should be enough time. The boarding team put on their spacesuits as a precaution. They didn't know what atmosphere the alien needed to breathe. When everyone was ready, Eric gave the signal to open the outer airlock door. The adapter tunnel stretched between the two ships, looking fragile against the vast darkness of space. Eric led the way, moving carefully through the tunnel until they reached the alien ship's entrance. The door opened slowly, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond. The air inside was thin and cold. Their suit sensors showed it contained oxygen, but not enough for humans to breathe comfortably. Eric gestured for the team to follow him as they moved deeper into the silent ship. They found Crusade in the command center, slumped in a chair near the communication console. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin that seemed to have once been luminous but now appeared dull. 4 long fingers on each hand. Large, dark eyes that blinked slowly as the humans entered. Dr. Harris moved forward slowly, keeping her hands visible. Crusade watched her with what seemed like caution and curiosity. I'm here to help you, Kelly said. Though she knew the alien couldn't understand her words, she pointed to the medical symbol on her suit, then to Crusade and made a gesture that she hoped conveyed healing. Benjamin took out a small device. This is a universal translator. It won't work yet, but it's recording everything for later analysis. Crusade spoke, his voice weak but clear. The sounds were unlike any human language, clicks and whistles mixed with deeper tones. Eric pointed to himself. Eric. Then he gestured to the others, saying each name clearly. Kelly, Benjamin. Crusade seemed to understand. He placed a 4-fingered hand on his chest. Crusade. Kelly approached carefully and held up a small scanner. She pointed to it, then to Crusade, raising her eyebrows in question. The alien hesitated, then nodded in a gesture surprisingly similar to a human's. The scanner showed concerning readings. Kelly turned to Eric. His vital signs are weak. I can't be sure without knowing more about his species, but I believe he's suffering from malnutrition and oxygen deprivation. We need to get him to our ship. Eric nodded and made a walking motion with his fingers, then pointed back toward the Horizon Seeker. Crusade understood and tried to stand, but his legs buckled beneath him. Without hesitation, Eric moved to support the alien. Crusade stiffened momentarily at the contact, then relaxed as he realized Eric was helping him. Benjamin joined them, and together they helped Crusade move toward the airlock. The adapter seal is starting to weaken. Joe's voice came through their comms. You have about 8 minutes left. We're on our way back, Eric replied. Crusade stopped suddenly, pointing toward a storage compartment. He spoke urgently, repeating the same sound several times. Benjamin looked at Eric. I think there's something important he wants to take with him. Eric nodded. Check what it is, quickly. Benjamin opened the compartment and found a small device with glowing symbols. Crusade reached for it weakly, and Benjamin placed it carefully in the alien's hand. Crusade clutched it tightly against his chest. They continued moving, but progress was slow. Crusade was weaker than they had anticipated, and the corridors of the alien ship were designed for his taller frame, making movement awkward for the humans. 4 minutes, Joe warned through the comms. They finally reached the adapter tunnel. Eric and Benjamin supported Crusade between them as they made their way through the narrow passage. The tunnel was already showing signs of stress. The material, flexing slightly as the temporary seals began to fail. 2 minutes. Joe's voice was tense now. They reached the Horizon Seeker's airlock just as the adapter began to make alarming creaking sounds. Sam was waiting for them, helping to pull Crusade through the doorway. As soon as they were all inside, the outer door sealed shut. The inner airlock door opened to reveal Captain Miller and several crew members waiting anxiously. Their expressions showed a mixture of shock and wonder at the sight of Crusade. Get him to the medical bay, Miller ordered. Dr. Harris, do whatever you can for him. As they helped Crusade through the corridors of the human ship, the alien looked around with wide eyes. The lights, the design, the humans themselves, everything was entirely foreign to him. Yet despite his weakness, there was curiosity in his gaze. In the medical bay, Kelly had prepared a bed and basic monitoring equipment. She helped Crusade lie down, then began setting up an oxygen feed based on the atmospheric readings from his ship. I don't know enough about his physiology to do much more than make him comfortable, she told Miller. But the oxygen mix should help. Benjamin set up his translation device near the bed. The more he speaks, the faster this will learn his language. Patterns. It's designed to find mathematical consistencies in any form of communication. Crusade watched them work, still clutching the device from his ship. When Kelly approached with a scanner, he held out his free hand in what seemed like a gesture of trust. Miller looked at the alien with respect. He's been alone for months, thinking he was going to die. Now he's surrounded by a species he's never seen before, and he's still keeping his composure. That takes courage. Crusade spoke, his voice slightly stronger now in the oxygen-enriched environment. The translation device recorded his words, beginning the long process of building a bridge between their languages. As the medical team worked, Miller stepped back to speak with Eric. What's the status of his ship? Beyond repair, Eric replied, quietly. The engine core is completely destroyed. Life support was days from total failure. If we hadn't found him when we did, Miller nodded grimly. Make sure we record everything about his ship. The design, the technology. It could help us communicate with him. In the medical bed, Crusade watched the humans talking. He didn't understand their words, but their actions told him everything he needed to know. These aliens had risked their safety to rescue him, a stranger. They were now working to keep him alive, to understand him. In all his studies of the cosmos, Crusade had never encountered anything more fascinating, or more hopeful, than these strange beings who had defied the silence of deep space to answer his call. 3 days passed aboard the Horizon Seeker. Crusade grew stronger with proper oxygen levels and nutrition, specially prepared by Kelly based on samples from his ship's food supplies. The medical bay had become his temporary home, modified to better suit his needs. Benjamin spent hours each day with the alien working with the translation device. Progress was slow but steady. By the 3rd day, they could exchange basic concepts. Your people, Crusade said through the translator, his words still choppy but understandable. Why come for me? Benjamin considered how to explain. We heard your call. Someone needed help. We help. Crusade's large eyes blinked in what Benjamin had learned was a sign of confusion. Resources, used for one life. Not logical. Logical? To us, Benjamin replied simply. Human way. Captain Miller entered the medical bay, nodding to Crusade. The alien had learned to return this gesture. How's our guest doing today? Miller asked Kelly. Much better, she replied. His body is responding well to the nutrient mix we created. His species seems remarkably adaptable. Miller turned to Crusade. Good to see you improving. The translator conveyed the words and Crusade responded. Grateful, still not understand. Why travel far, for unknown alien? Miller sat in the chair beside the bed. That's a big question. Let me try to explain. He paused, thinking how to put it simply. Humans believe all life has value. One life or many lives, all important. We heard someone calling for help, we couldn't ignore that. As the translator worked, Crusade's expression changed in a way the humans were beginning to recognize as deep thought. Deltarians different, Crusade finally said. Resources only for greatest good. One life not worth rescue mission. Your people, the Deltarians, they decided not to rescue you? Miller asked carefully. Correct. Logical decision. Too far. Too much fuel. One life not worth cost. The humans exchanged glances. The concept was difficult for them to accept. That must have been hard to hear, Kelly said gently. Crusade made a gesture they hadn't seen before, a quick movement of his fingers that the translator couldn't interpret. Expected, our way. But he hesitated. When alone in dark space, wished for different way. Miller nodded slowly. Well, you found a different way, or it found you. Later that day, Sam and Joe visited the medical bay. They carried several pieces of technology they had managed to salvage from the Stellar Whisper before the ship separated. We saved what we could, Sam explained as the translator worked. Your ship's core was too damaged, but we retrieved your data storage units. Crusade's eyes widened. He reached for the small device he had brought with him, which had remained close to his bed. Research data, very important, years of work. Joe nodded. We figured it might be. We're trying to create an interface to read it, if you'd allow us. Crusade hesitated only briefly before handing over the device. Help me connect to your systems? Sam smiled. That's the plan. A little cross-species tech cooperation. As days turned into a week, Crusade grew strong enough to leave the medical bay. The crew had prepared quarters for him, modified to match the environmental conditions he preferred. Benjamin's translation device improved daily, making communication easier. Crusade spent time in different parts of the ship, learning about human technology and culture. The differences fascinated him. In the ship's observation lounge, Crusade stood beside Captain Miller, looking out at the stars. They had been traveling for 5 days, heading toward Deltarian space. Your ship moves differently than ours, Crusade noted. The translator now produced smooth sentences, less efficient in some ways, more in others. Miller nodded. We've noticed the same about your technology, different approaches to the same problems. Crusade was quiet for a moment. In Deltarian science, we seek the most efficient solution. One correct answer. Humans often find many ways to solve a problem, Miller replied. Sometimes the most efficient way isn't the best way. Like rescue mission for one alien, Crusade said softly. Exactly. Crusade turned from the window to face Miller. I have studied your crew, watched how they work together. Different from Deltarians. How so? Miller asked. Deltarians follow orders precisely. Logical chain of command. Your crew, they question, suggest, debate. Seems inefficient, but results are creative. Miller smiled. That's humanity in a nutshell. Messy, inefficient, argumentative, but we come up with solutions no one person would think of alone. In the ship's mess hall, Crusade experienced another aspect of human culture. Lisa had organized a small gathering to celebrate the successful translation program. The concept of a party was unfamiliar to the Deltarian. You create sound patterns. For enjoyment? Crusade asked as music played. We call it music, Lisa explained. Don't Deltarians have music? Sound is for communication only. Efficiency, Sam laughed. Well, music communicates too, just different things. Feelings mostly. Crusade, watched as some crew members moved their bodies to the rhythm. Physical movement synchronized to sound patterns. Purpose? Dancing, Lisa said with a smile. The purpose is fun. Fun, Crusade repeated. The translator had no Deltarian equivalent. At another table, Crusade observed crew members playing a card game, laughing and teasing each other. They compete yet seem happy when others succeed, he noted, confused. Benjamin nodded. Games are like that. Winning matters less than the experience of playing together. Crusade absorbed this information with the same diligence he applied to studying stars. Your species uses resources for activities with no survival benefit. Those activities give life meaning beyond survival, Benjamin explained. That evening, Crusade worked with Sam in the engineering bay. They had managed to connect his research device to the ship's computers, and his years of cosmic data were now being translated into human formats. Your studies of the nebula region are fascinating, Sam said, looking at the displays. Our scientists will be excited to see this. Not as detailed as I hoped, Crusade replied. Mission ended prematurely. Sam put a hand on Crusade's shoulder, a human gesture that had initially startled the alien but which he now understood as friendly. The mission continues, just with new colleagues. As the Horizon Seeker approached Deltarian space, Crusade spent more time alone in his quarters. Captain Miller found him there studying human history on a data pad. We'll reach the border of your people's territory tomorrow, Miller informed him. We've been broadcasting messages ahead but haven't received a response yet. Crusade set down the pad. They will be cautious. Unexpected alien ship is potential threat. We come in peace, Miller assured him. Peace concept different for Deltarians, Crusade explained. Security through strength and isolation. Your open approach? Unusual. Miller nodded. What do you think will happen when we arrive? Crusade was silent for a long moment. I was declared dead. Return creates complications. With aliens who think differently, bigger complications. Are you worried? Yes, Crusade admitted, but also curious. Deltarians follow old patterns. Perhaps time for new patterns. Miller smiled. Sometimes, it takes an outside perspective to see new possibilities. Like seeing that one life worth saving, Crusade replied, even across vast darkness of space. The Horizon Seeker slowed as it approached the border of Deltarian space. On the bridge, tension was high. Captain Miller stood calmly, watching the main screen where stars glittered against the darkness. Any response to our messages? He asked. Lisa. Nothing yet, Captain, she replied, adjusting her headset. I've sent the greeting in the format Crusade suggested, but there's only silence. Crusade stood nearby, his tall frame now healthy again. They are watching, assessing. As if to confirm his words, sensors suddenly detected 3 ships appearing from behind a small moon. The vessels were larger than the Horizon Seeker, with sleek designs that reminded Miller of sea creatures from Earth's oceans. Deltarian patrol. Ships, Crusade explained. Defense formation. The main screen flickered and a Deltarian face appeared. The alien looked similar to Crusade's, but with darker skin markings around the eyes. He spoke in the clicking, whistling language of his people. 2. Translation device processed the words, alien vessel. You have entered Deltarian space. Identify purpose. Miller stepped forward. I am Captain Frank Miller of the Earth vessel Horizon Seeker. We come in peace, bringing one of your people home. The Deltarian commander's eyes widened slightly as Crusade moved into view. There was a long pause before he responded. Science Officer Crusade was declared dead. Explain. Crusade spoke directly to his countrymen. My ship was damaged. I sent distress signals. These humans answered when our people could not. More rapid speech followed, too complex for the translator to fully capture. The commander's tone seemed harsh, his posture rigid. Commander Zelkar orders us to remain here, Crusade told Miller. The High Council will decide what happens next. Hours passed as the Horizon Seeker waited. surrounded by the Deltarian patrol ships. The crew tried to stay busy, but the uncertainty weighed on everyone. In his quarters, Crusade sat with Captain Miller and Benjamin, explaining the situation. My return creates problems for High Council, he said. They declared me lost, resources too valuable to waste on rescue. Now aliens rescue me, shows different way possible. Miller nodded. They're worried about the political implications. Yes, and cultural contamination. I have lived among aliens, learned new ideas. Benjamin leaned forward. What do you think will happen? Crusade's expression was hard to read. Two possibilities. Restrict contact, take me back, learn your technology. Or begin new relationship with humans. Depends which leaders have strongest voice. After nearly a day of waiting, Lisa detected a new transmission. Captain, we're receiving a message. It's coming from the Deltarian homeworld. On screen, an older Deltarian appeared, wearing ornate symbols of authority. The High Counselor spoke slowly, allowing the translator to process his words more accurately. Captain Miller of Earth, we have reviewed your actions and communications. You entered our space uninvited. We came to return Crusade to his people. Miller replied calmly. A noble claim, the counselor said. Yet you must understand our caution. No species has ever reached our territory before. We didn't plan to discover you, Miller explained. We simply answered a distress call. The counselor's eyes narrowed. Using considerable resources to save one unknown life. This concept is foreign to us. Crusade stepped forward. High Counselor, with respect, I request permission to transmit my experiences with the humans to the information network. The request clearly surprised the counselor. The information network was the Deltarian communication system that connected their entire civilization. What one Deltarian experienced could be shared with all. You wish all Deltarians to know of your time with these aliens? The counselor asked. Yes, Crusade replied firmly. They should know there are different ways to view life and resources, ways we have not considered. The counselor was silent for a long moment. This would cause disruption. Perhaps disruption is needed, Crusade suggested. We value efficiency, but these humans showed me that sometimes most efficient path is not most beneficial path. Miller watched this exchange with interest. Crusade was challenging his society's fundamental beliefs, a brave act in any culture. After consulting with others off-screen, the High Counselor made his decision. Crusade will return to Deltaria. The human vessel must remain at the border. A delegation will meet with you to establish formal contact protocols. And my request? Crusade asked. Your experiences will be reviewed by the Council before any wider sharing. It wasn't everything Crusade had asked for, but it was a start. The transmission ended, and the bridge crew looked to Miller for guidance. Sounds like we're going to be here a while, the captain said with a slight smile. Looks like first contact has officially begun. Later, as Crusade prepared to transfer to the Deltarian ship, he spoke privately with Captain Miller in the airlock chamber. I must thank you and your crew, Crusade said. Not just for saving my life, but for showing me a different way to see the universe. Miller shook his head. You don't need to thank us. We did what any human would do. That is precisely why thanks are needed, Crusade replied. What seems ordinary to you is revolutionary to my people. The Deltarian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. This contains my research data, but also my personal observations of human culture. If the Council restricts my network transmission, find a way to share this with young Deltarians. They are most open to new ideas. Miller accepted the device solemnly. I will, and this is for you. He handed Crusade a small metal object, a pin with the Horizon Seeker's emblem. So you remember your time with us. I could not forget, Crusade assured him. You heard me when no one else was listening. The airlock door opened, revealing two Deltarian officers waiting to escort Crusade home. Before leaving, he performed a perfect human handshake with Miller, a gesture he had practiced with the crew. This is not an ending, Crusade said. Merely the beginning of a new connection between our peoples. As the days passed, the diplomatic process began. Small delegations of Deltarians visited the Horizon Seeker, cautious but curious. Human representatives were eventually permitted to visit a Deltarian outpost. Progress was slow but steady. 1 month after Crusade's return, Miller received a message in his private quarters. It was from Crusade, now working as an advisor to the High Council on Human Relations. The message was brief. The Council has granted permission for my experiences to be shared on the information network. Young Deltarians especially are asking questions about human values. Some are suggesting changes to our rescue protocols. A single voice in the darkness can be heard, if someone is willing to listen. Miller smiled as he read the message. The Horizon Seeker had been sent to chart new territories in space, but they had discovered something far more valuable, a new perspective on what made humanity unique. Their mission had been delayed, their fuel reserves depleted, their schedules disrupted. By cold Deltarian logic, it had been highly inefficient. But as Miller looked at the ongoing diplomatic discussions and the beginning of cultural exchange between two vastly different species, he knew they had made the right choice. Sometimes the most important discoveries weren't stars or planets, but the connections made when someone answers a call from the darkness, proving that across the vastness of space, compassion could bridge the greatest distances,